Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine Lige, and I'm a clinical social worker at the Child Mind Institute. We're a national nonprofit that supports children and families with gold standard mental health care, advice, and resources that is all online and accessible to everyone. We're here for you whether you need diagnosis, treatment of mental health and learning disorders, group for anxiety. We have groups for anxiety, mood disorders, ADHD, and more. We have remote neuropsych evaluations, as well as tons and tons of articles and other telehealth resources for your support. So please visit childmind.org/telehealth to learn more. With the protests of the violent death of Black Americans making headlines in the news, it is understandable that many children may be feeling scared or confused or angry about the situation. And we are all thinking about racism and violence and how to raise children who care and how you can talk to them about what's going on. We're happy to try to answer all of your questions, whether it's parenting challenges you have or the anxieties that you yourself are facing. Today, I'd like to talk to you about reopening and risk taking, specifically just thinking about teenagers as well, and how that's going to happen. So, I'm here to answer your questions on this topic as well as anything else. And of course, if you have any comments or questions about race and how to talk to your children, I'm happy to do that too. Post your questions in the feed, and we will also post links to helpful resources on the Child Mind Institute website. So that's childmind.org. Remember that we're here every day and we look through your questions daily. So to dive right in and to answer some questions, we had some questions from before that we're happy to answer now, and continue to put your own questions in the feed, and I will also just sort of to add in some information as I go, but I am here for your questions, so please don't hesitate to post. So just thinking about this topic of reopening and really the risk taking during this time, because a lot of this feels like risk taking, I want to look at things through two lenses. So that's sanity and safety. Usually I like to have two key points in these, just so that we can sort of stay on topic and how we can apply that throughout all of your questions. So in terms of sanity and thinking about that, when we're thinking about kids, part of this is the brain. So just a little bit about, just teenagers, and specifically teenagers in the brain, is that really your brain isn't developed until you're 24. I mean, some studies even show later than that. So, you're thinking about the prefrontal cortex, and it's really there for you to make those good decisions. So if that's not fully developed, there's going to be some bumps along the way. And I'm sure as parents, you know that you've had bumps along the way too. And so that has to do with the reopening. There's reopening happening across the United States, across the world, really. And there's a lot of questions that we may have about things that we should do, things that we shouldn't do. It can get quite confusing because not everyone is on the same playing field. I mean, California versus New York versus, any place else, Texas and Wyoming, anywhere else. There's different states and regulations that are going on. And in addition to that, we have protests happening. We have people coming together. So we're just trying to figure out what is the best way to go about this. And that's why I'm discussing these two topics, which is sanity and safety. So when it comes to your children, we have a lot of great resources online that talk about how to talk to your child about reopening. We have started, getting some articles up on that. But really what I think we're in this middle ground where we have to we have the ability, right, to go out based on what our state is saying. Maybe they're saying that now you can go to a restaurant and, it's very small, a limited amount of people that can go, or there's like a low capacity. Or there's other places that are saying, religious gatherings that are less than 25. That's also something that's happening. And you might be feeling this tug of, do I want to do this, though I have the ability? And some of you are, I'm going to go ahead and take this opportunity. So thinking about that in terms of sanity, there could definitely be a lot of anxieties when it comes to your health and whether or not you are putting yourself at risk when you're going out. And your children might be feeling that too. And of course, whenever we're feeling something, we definitely project on our kids. So for sanity, I would say for your anxieties, if you are having anxieties about your concerns for your health, please follow what the CDC recommends. Please follow what trusted websites and resources say. So wearing your mask, making sure you have that hand sanitizer, keeping that distance. I'll talk a little bit about social distancing when we get to some of the questions, because there's actually a pretty good question about social distancing and what our kids may or may not want to do. But at the end of the day, we want to balance our sanity and we want to balance our safety. So I'm hoping that today we can discuss how we can look at both lenses and really see this as a new territory. I mean, we went from shelter in place to now we have limited places in which we can actually go to and places that we've gone to before, and especially some of us may be returning to jobs. So I want to also touch on that. But remember, if you're joining in right now, my name is Catherine Lage. I'm a clinical social worker at the Child Mind Institute. We're talking about reopening and risk taking, and so please do comment in on Facebook. Go ahead and send your comments to us, whether that be about reopening, as well as we are here to discuss race and racism. So please do go ahead and ask those. Oh, looks like we already have a question. Thank you, Joanna. I appreciate your question. Joanna asks, all screen time limits have gone out the window due to virtual everything this spring. Frankly, I probably don't even know I don't know about half the things my teenager has been doing online. Now that she may be starting to go out and socializing in person, any advice or what I should expect or be concerned about? This is a good question. I think, we have lots and lots of resources on screen time. I think initially we went to sort of thinking about how there are, limits on screen time, which can be okay, but that it was a little bit more lenient due to the fact that we were shelter in place. So now that that's not necessarily something that we are enforcing as much as the shelter in place, and that there are ways to allow. I mean, the amount of drive-through graduations I've witnessed, it's beautiful, and everyone's coming together, but that means you're still going out of your house, you're doing something different, which hopefully can help as far as those concerns. So virtually, I think we have really, there's been an uptake in the amount of screen time all of us have been doing. I mean, with articles and keeping up with the news, and especially what's going on with racism and police brutality, we want to stay informed, which is okay. I do still recommend to adults and children that there should be some boundaries. So I think with, now, and, hopefully everyone's, as far as students who are graduating or school is ending for them, if you're in a year-round school, you might be getting a break soon. Take some time to reevaluate your screen usage. So if you were doing distance learning before, maybe you've finished school, then this is a good time to maybe take some breaks. And you can still stay informed while doing so. I mean, there's tons of ways to get just read a couple articles a day about what to, be aware of, or really sort of satisfy that, and then continuing. So if your child wants to, utilize at least some time to be on social media, that is okay. I mean, but really, as far as getting to know what they're doing online, I guess, really having a conversation about it, I would say too, is something that you can do. Whether that be that they're looking up ways to, talk to more friends, or, they're using their social networking platforms for that, or they're using it to discuss the events that are taking place in society right now. It's just good to know about those things. So have a conversation, like what types of things have you come across? What types of things have you been posting? And try to have an honest conversation about it. And I think this is a great opportunity for you to actually engage in a conversation about how your child is feeling, and talking to them about what's going on. So I would start there, is to say that, now that things are reopening, maybe we can limit the social media, maybe we can limit the screen time, because we are able to maybe go to the park now. We are maybe able to go on that trail. So, decreasing time gradually. And I would say, just as we had expectations of how screen time was going to be when the COVID-19 crisis began, we still need that leniency now, especially because things are not solidified. So hold off on those expectations. I know we all want to have some sort of sense of normalcy, and oh, this could be a glimmer of hope that things are going back to normal. But I would hold off on that just for now. And then now talking about just on the topic of going out and socializing. So um, I think really, as far as expectations and what to be concerned about is now the safety. So sanity was maybe I want to talk and be on the phone and have all of this screen time so that I can feel connected to my friends. Now it's about sanity, just sanity and thinking, okay, now you have this time, maybe you spend an hour with a friend. I know that some parents are even enforcing like a one friend type of rule where you spend much of your time with one friend, a trusted friend that is going to have the same sort of social distancing values, and thinking that have the same sort of be on the same page is what I'm trying to say there. But so thinking about that, so how can they have connection and how can they also be safe at the same time? That's what I think what should be the focus here, because socializing is really important. I mean, going back to the brain and talking about where teenagers are today, socializing is such a big part of things. And when you're thinking about social media, this is a lot of where they get their identity, and sort of, what do I think about myself? Oh, I like how this person looks. I like how this person dresses. I wish I looked like that, or I wish I was able to do those types of things that this person is doing. And so those are the sorts of things that teenagers are grappling right now. So with that, I mean, this can feel like forever. I mean, let's be honest. Not only do we have our kids, to think about when it comes to reopening, whether it comes to this feeling like it's forever, though it's been, it has been about 2 months for some, 3 months for some, maybe 4 months. But we can relate to our teenagers. I mean, this does feel like forever, and we're adults. So I mean, let's normalize that and say we're all pretty much like, think of those similarities, that common ground, and I think that can honestly improve and sort of keep the flow of your conversations and that honesty, especially as things reopen and going into that risk taking. So I mean, think about posting pictures. This, now that it's time to go outside, maybe this is something that your teenager wants to do, get back to Snapchats and TikToks, and I didn't even know the other list of things that kids are doing now, but they might want to get back to that. So, continuing to say, this is something that maybe they like to do. It makes them feel creative. There goes that sanity, right? I want my kid to develop their identity. I want them to be able to enjoy their time, and be a kid, but also safety. So how they're going about that, hey, let's make sure we're not swapping phones, and when someone wants to take a picture, we're just being cognizant of that. Wiping off our phones if that's the case, things like that. So I hope that answered your question. This actually bleeds into another question that we received, and that I think was really important to talk about. So this question says, my teenager son has been going to Black Lives Matter protests. I'm really worried that not only might he get arrested, but also he could get sick. How can I get across to him about being safe? So I appreciate this question because I think really this is a good conversation about how can you protest and be safe at the same time? Because I think this is a question that everybody wants to know, what they can do while also keeping safe. I mean, there's so many things going on where, like I said, the different states are reopening different rates, that they're doing so. So it's important to sort of start there and say, well, if you are, let's start with safety, and being a part of the Black Lives Matter protest, which is amazing, which is great. How can you do that? So, like I said, there's a lot of places that are actually have helpers who have stationed themselves there. Bring water. Don't allowing yourself not to be dehydrated. Keeping that sanitizer, having the mask. I know that some people are taking the time to now photograph, take pictures. It's something that people, want to post that they've attended a protest, but still hopefully keeping that safe distance. I have seen the crowds. I've been in the crowds, and it's hard to keep that 6 feet rule. But keeping your hands to yourself. If someone is passing by, everyone being aware. This person's passing by. We can keep the safe distance. So I would start there too. And then as far as being arrested, I think really that is a big safety concern. And really your sanity and their safety can definitely go hand in hand here. um, I have really thinking about what is going on right now, and um, people who are attending protests and possibly taking the risk of being arrested or things like that. It's good to stay safe, and think about that ahead of time, as far as if there is any case, being sure that you have your safety measures, what exactly it is that how you respond. People are taking precautions and bringing out cameras, making sure that if there is any reasons that they're getting arrested, that they're aware of those reasons. So I would say, when you're talking to your teenage son, really it's great to be a part of the Black Lives Matter protests, a part of this movement, and this can also be a danger and threat, for all of us who are attending. Um, but I think that's a good conversation to have. Now, it looks like we do have another question. So I appreciate Roxanne. Everyone who's just tuning in, my name is Catherine Lage, and I'm a clinical social worker at the Childmind Institute. We're talking about risks of reopening, and just what to do as far as talking to our kids about this, while also discussing different types of questions that we might have about protesting, racism, and how to deal with that. And so Roxanne has a question. Roxanne is asking, do you have social stories on what's going on right now? Talking to a 5, 6, and 11-year-old about the protests. So, absolutely. We work as the student success program that I'm a part of. We do work with the Boys and Girls Club, and this is actually a question that they had for themselves. So what we sent them, and just thinking about how to talk to students about this as educators as well, because some of you educators are still in school. It's really about starting with factual information about what happened. I mean, why did this start? So, stories about this. I mean, the story is that George Floyd lost his life. He was murdered, and so he lost his life because of the color of his skin. I mean, there was a perceived threat because of a dollar bill that was maybe possibly false or something like that. You can talk to them about how there was a miscommunication as to what went wrong. And because of the color of his skin, he was treated in a way that was, it took it out of proportions and really went to an extreme. And so he lost his life. And so with that, the Black Lives Matter protests and things like that, continued, because this has happened before, talking to them about why. what does Black Lives Matter mean? Does this mean that all lives don't matter? That's a question and conversation to have too, because the fact of the matter is that we're having to talk about Black Lives Matter because there is a question as to, do Black Lives Matter, and so we want to solidify that answer. And before we can solidify that all lives matter, we have to solidify that Black Lives Matter, and that's a conversation you can have with a 5-year-old, 6-year-old. That some people are confused, some people don't understand, or maybe they understand and they just don't have really good intentions. And so with the 11-year-old, I think it would be good to continue to talk about that. We actually talked to some kiddos about what kind of things that they can do. So even if you wanted to talk about them drawing something and putting it in a window, so that has been really comforting for some, as they take walks. I mean, more and more people have been taking walks because of the COVID-19 crisis, but now we're able to really go freely and putting that in your window, or writing a letter. This is how I'm feeling. I know that too. Some kids have even thought about how they can get others to donate, or there's definitely virtual protests and things like that to be a part of. So I would say, for when you talk about a story of what's going on, tell the facts about that, and then say, here's some ways that we can understand it better, or get involved. So I hope I was able to answer that question. So just on the topic of this, just talking about protesting, things like that, but also just as we're going into the risk taking, and because of the protest, it is taking a risk if you do attend. And this is actually a question that we received just a while ago, and the question is, if I make strict rules, I wonder if my kids will break them anyway. How do I make rules so that they get followed? Um, this is a great question. I think we all wish we had the magic answer. We all wish that we would be able to gauge whether or not our kids are going to actually listen to this, or this strict rule. I mean, even so, I guess my suggestion here is, I usually like to come up with rules together. Telling kids what to do, especially as they get older, can get a little, it just involves some conflicts, especially if they're not in agreement. Well, we can have a conversation not only about how what the rules are, but why they need to be. So, I mean, and the topic of strict rules, think about what strict means to you. Think about why you perceive them as strict. I mean, rules like wear a mask. That, I don't think that's necessarily strict. I think you can actually say, well, we're keeping each other safe by doing so, because you can hang out with a friend and not understand that you might have something, have the coronavirus, or have or feeling a little sick or something like that, and that's actually what spreads the virus. So understanding that, if the rule is that I am I don't want you to be out past 10 o'clock. That is, I mean, that maybe I don't know if that's a strict rule, and I guess also that depends on the age group. But when you're thinking about rules, like I said, think about them in consideration, as well as going back to my 2 key points, which is sanity and safety. And so sanity might look like a curfew of, if you're having maybe even just like hanging out on your block. I mean, I know for me, it's just allowing the kids to ride the bike in the courtyard, and if that's, hey, come in at 6 p.m. so you can have dinner. Talk to your child. Is 6 p.m. okay? That's the time we're going to have dinner, and maybe if that's 5:30 or if that's 6:30 or something like that, you can be a little bit lenient. So yeah, thinking about those 2 things, safety and also sanity. So I have a couple minutes left. I want to make sure that we get to your questions. Again, my name is Catherine Leash. If you are just now tuning in, and we are talking about reopening and just thinking about those risk taking that we're all doing, not only our kids, but we're doing as well. So if you have any questions, go ahead and post them as we have just a couple minutes left, and I am happy to answer them. Um, all right, so we do have one last question actually, and the last question is team sport right now. It looks like I I think what I'm looking for from you, Rachel. Thank you, Rachel, for this question. Team sports right now. I'm wondering if your question is that if we're going to, if you want thinking about allowing your student or your child to participate in sports right now, or if if that's okay. If that is the question, you feel free to clarify if that's not. Sports. So I know that there's been a lot of organizations that have tried to be at least a little bit more so understanding of what that looks like when you're playing a team sport. So I'm thinking about maybe baseball, or I'm thinking of soccer or something like that. Um, there are some, organizations out there that are continuing sports. Is that a problem? I mean, not necessarily if, you are, because everyone has to follow, these modified rules, and, safety is the priority right now. So if that is the case, definitely think about, sanity versus safety, because, attending games can be a question. How many people can attend the game? So maybe now it's that, grandma can't come to the baseball game, or if the team sport is, I don't know, volleyball, swim, things like that. Those types of things that, we might be having questions like, do you have to get tested before you join the sports? Does everyone have to get a temperature check when they walk in? There's a lot of questions. So think about that when it comes to sanity on what you would prefer to do, because I think that would definitely be a conversation. And then also with just thinking about your safety. How would that look for your child? So do you want to make sure that they have a specific mask? Do you want to make sure that they have, they're equipped every time they go out with their hand sanitizer or wipes? I mean, I would think about all of these things, because, like I said, it plays into your sanity, but it also plays into the safety. And also thinking about, if your family, any of you family members are returning back to work, just the increased amount of frequency as far as how many people are going in and out of the home and who they're exposed to. And I know schools are even thinking about that now. So not only that, but once we go into the fall, we'll have to consider, well, now my children are exposed to maybe it's a small group of kids, but it's still, a group of kids, and they're coming home. So I would also think about that. I hope that answered your question, Rachel. I do appreciate everyone for joining in today, and thank you. I hope it was helpful again. Remember that we're here every day to support you during this time, so please do make sure you still put in comments, things like that. Check out the childmind.org website, because we're here to help your mental health and parenting needs during the COVID-19 crisis, as well as just this time where we are dealing with racism and violence. Please visit childmind.org/telehealth to learn more about the incredible variety of remote telehealth resources that we have available for children, teens, and young adults during this time. I wish you safety and wellness. Thanks for watching.